I am Dr. Roger Sneed. I am the Dorothy and B.H. Peace Jr. Associate Professor of Religion and Chair. I've been here since 2007. I teach courses in African American religious history and thought, religion and sexuality, ethics and society, and also religion and pop culture.
I'm Cynthia King, Professor of Communication Studies. My area of emphasis in the field is rhetoric and public discourse. I've been at Furman since 2006. I teach courses in rhetoric and public discourse, race and gender and class in the media, public speaking, introduction to rhetoric, African American rhetoric, and great speeches.
All right, my name is Qwameek Bethea, and I am a senior from Dillon, South Carolina. I'm the NAACP president here on campus. I'm majoring in philosophy and politics and international affairs, and I am a pre-law.
I'm David Akerson. I'm an alumni from 1984. I am a lawyer who has worked in social justice issues my whole career. And for the last 20 years, I've been involved in war crimes and genocide investigations and prosecutions, from the Rwanda genocide to Yugoslavia to Lebanon to Iraq, Syria. So I've had a pretty international portfolio the last 20 years, but my career has been based on social justice. I had read with great interest a number of articles about other universities that were wrestling with the moral dilemma of having their namesakes being debated about their histories and their legacies and whether they continue to merit having universities named after them. That includes Clemson, which really caught my eye. One of their colleges is named after John Calhoun, who was a notorious racist, and they've decided to change the name of that college within the university. Princeton, Brown are both engaged in those debates. Washington and Lee the faculty has already voted to remove the name Lee from the university, which refers to Robert E. Lee. And so I just on a lark, I was interested in kind of looking up who Furman was named after and what that person represented. And so I did some research and kind of went down a rabbit hole on Robert Furman, Richard Furman, the founder of Furman, or the namesake, I should say, of Furman. James C. Furman was really the founder of Furman. And I was shocked one by his legacy on slavery. Richard Furman wasn't just a normal slaveholder or a normal slave advocate of the South, which would have been pretty normal. But he was really the thought leader for South Carolina on slavery. And when abolition movements, as I understand it, you guys are probably more experts on this than I am, but just on my limited research, what I learned is he wrote a treatise that provided the justification for all Southern Baptists that slavery was not a sin, or if it was a sin, it was a justifiable sin, and that it was not a problem for people to own slaves. Based on religious doctrine. And in his famous treatise, this is around 1820 that he penned this treatise, he made a number of, for me, were shocking statements, not the least of which is that Africans were slaves by their own consent, and that they essentially deserved to be slaves because of their petty wars in Africa. And so for me, that was the start of my journey. And then I looked to James C. Furman, and James C. Furman perhaps is even worse. And I know Furman has done some work, like many universities, in conducting their own internal studies And they've made some recommendations, which for me don't go far enough. I feel like no university should be named after a person of this character, the person who is this responsible for the amount of suffering in South Carolina and in the South, because Richard Furman was the thought leader, the representative of the Southern Baptists on the issue of slavery. So that's where I got started. And I created a petition for the Board of Trustees at Furman to consider changing the name because it's an embarrassment. And then, I've been looking for ways to try to make more impact and to connect and recruit other alumni onto my cause. So that's where I started.
I'll dive in because when I got the email about this, I thought about this, and I thought, well, changing the university's name would be an intriguing process, and I think absolutely a controversial process. But I tend to be more interested and more concerned with substantive moves. And in some ways, I want to say that I am speaking for myself, both as an African-American male and a student of, I've been to predominantly white institutions, all of which have their, problematic is not even the word I would want to use, troublesome histories with regards to African-Americans. So Furman is not alone in this regard. I guess certainly it's unique in that we're talking about Richard Furman. But I tend to want to see more substantive changes. I look at things like admissions, at looking at how we even do admissions tours. I'm looking at the presence of fraternities and sororities on campus. I'm looking at how we deal with incidents, racist incidents that happen in the classroom. Because I think we're all aware of the Black at Furman Instagram page. And as a professor, I've been in the field for almost 20 years now. And it is appalling to me to see the things that Black students have endured, things that I endured as a college student maybe almost 30 years ago. So I'm not opposed to a name change, but I want to look more to the substantive things that actually affect the lives of Black students and faculty and staff day to day on this campus.
I concur wholeheartedly. I love that you sort of said that the prospect of changing the name is intriguing. It is intriguing, and I would love to be in conversations about it. That's fine. As far as a priority in the now, in the moment, there needs to be a culture change in Furman, and that's from the ground up. Roger said to start with the admissions process, to review. There's certain departments on campus that need some training and reflection, and maybe even some apologies, to really take a look and a deep dive at the Black at Furman. That's what racism on Furman looks like. People are still in denial. I've heard, senior administrators say people don't believe that it really happens at Furman. It's such an idyllic place, but you have it there. It is what racism, racial insensitivity looks like. And we all need to be really processing that and seeing what can be done to change. I mean, certainly there are policy implementations that need to be done there, in order to change the culture, to make it inclusive. It's a polite campus, and there are kind people on campus, but is it really inclusivity, yeah, no, that needs lots of work. I think I am really excited that we're headed in, I see movement. Over the last few years, I see some movements, and we're having conversations that we didn't have. And some, you had the Seeking Abraham and those recommendations, and that the board accepted some of those recommendations. And I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming they're moving toward that implementation. So that's really a good thing. I'll tell you something else. What about a diversity, or however you want to call it, a GER, a mandatory study of history and culture of the United? No, people don't understand the history and culture of the United States, especially in general, but especially where race is concerned. They have no idea. It's been whitewashed. So they have no idea. This is just, I gave a speech to some elderly white individuals, and I tried to be gentle, but I talked about this racial reckoning because they didn't really understand it. They thought it was just the liberal media, and I said, in the Black community, we've been talking about this since way before, but 1990s. Every sitcom, every Black situation comedy talked about the problems with the police and African Americans. It's been known, right? So coming to terms with that, having those kinds of conversations that would generate a real understanding of what we see before us. It's not just chaos, man. It's just, this is something that is deeply rooted. It is something that is ingrained. It is something that is entrenched. And while, yes, I think symbolically changing Furman's name, yes, that could be a good thing. And like Roger, it's like, I'm not opposed to it. But would it be a priority? This is a major project, right? All of this is a major project. And there are different sub-projects to this greater, trek toward making Furman more inclusive. So we all have our little projects, but like Roger, it's like, ooh, right here, down here on campus from where I'm sitting, it's like, there's some work to be done. And I want to see that work done and put my energies and attention to that work. But it does not preclude having that conversation at all. I'm just like, well, if you want to know what I'm talking about, if I want to know what I want to talk about, it's like, here it is.
I definitely agree with everything that Dr. King and Dr. Sneed have said thus far. And I definitely think when it comes to changing the name of the university, like you said, that is something I feel like that's symbolic. That is something Furman, I don't think some people just confuse the fact that Furman is a business. This university is a business. And Furman has become a name brand. And the Furman brand is the thing that's very present on this campus from the way that it's built, the culture that has been established. It has its history. It has the way that it's set up from the furniture. You go inside the furniture, you see it looks like an English Victorian town hall. You don't have any Black art, any Black representation, any Latina art, any Latina representation. So whenever you look at that campus climate, whenever you're walking around here, and like you said, Dr. Steve, at the tours, and you see, we have targeted diversity tours for just African Americans and people of color. Why should we have to do that? There should be enough people inside of each of those tours in a diverse group where you wouldn't have to separate them and have them have their own tour just to be with people who look like them. I think that's something that we definitely need to be examining and looking at a little bit closer. And I think whenever you're trying to get the university to just push this name change, like you said, it's definitely something that is going to you have to have major buy-in from all the players. All the stakeholders have to be able to do that. And I think whenever you do something like that and you split everybody into factions, sort of like what we're experiencing now, it makes it kind of hard to get that real substantive work that we're trying to do done. So I think we should first start with that substantive work and changing the campus climate. And that's why we have the Black at Furman Ad Hoc Committee. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but that is a committee consisting of Dr. Jennings, Dr. Lisa Knight of the Strategic Diversity Initiative, Ms. Deborah Allen, students, faculty, alumni, and staff, all Black, and we're coming together to focus on these crucial substantive issues, like you guys were all saying. We're focused on recruitment, diversity, and inclusion, discrimination, and bias reporting. And those are some of the areas that we are focused on. And we're basically crafting recommendations to submit to President Davis towards the end of the fall to be implemented in terms of these different things. And some of the things we've been looking at is teaching about basically the history of Furman and addressing that up front and letting people know what Furman has going on from the beginning. Trying to get our level of African American students and faculty to on par with our peer institutions like Davidson and other universities. Making sure we have religious diversity on campus and making sure those people are definitely being represented and have an actual community support them. And also, like we were just saying, is having more Black representation on campus in terms of the environment, the art, the food. I don't feel like the Student Diversity Council and those organizations within them should be the only people promoting and creating this programming for students. I feel like if the university wants that type of diversity programming, they should also take part in that. And it kind of disappoints me where we have all these organizations doing this work and doing these things, and we don't have our administration support behind it. And so I think that really is truly the real work that needs to be done, is changing the school culture. When it comes to the GER and CLP requirement, I actually created, I spoke with SGA, Griffin Mills, the student body president, and we actually came together and I created a whole petition, the Student Diversity, the Student Leadership Diversity Initiative. It focuses on a GER course requirement and CLP track that would be basically oriented towards diversity and inclusion. I will send you guys the link to that later, and you can spread it with your classrooms or anyone, faculty and staff are signing it. I also added, like we said, the religious. We wanted to make sure we had religious students accurately being represented and members of the LGBTQ community, and making sure that our levels of enrollment are on par with our peer institutions. And if we can't get to that level, we need to start examining why aren't people coming here. Before we try and bring more people here, we have to figure out why are the people that are here not already staying. So before you put somebody into this campus culture and environment, we need to, like you said, break it down, see what the real fundamental issues are, and start addressing these problems to make this a place where students will want to come. Black students might actually say, I want to go to Furman, and not just for the amount of aid that they're getting, but because they genuinely want to be a part of that community.
I have I guess the first thing I want to say is, one, I really appreciate, Charlie, that you have assembled this panel and that there are so many people of color that can give voice to kind of their perspective, because it's certainly an important perspective. And I agree with you guys. I like, by starting the conversation about a name change I hope I don't give the impression that's the only thing I think needs to be done. I think the Furman family, that name, has committed grave crimes beyond the ordinary South Carolina citizen, and they need to be held accountable. And so I guess first and foremost, I think all of the things you guys are talking about, these initiatives, these priorities, I don't see them as detracting from the conversation about a name change, which will be a difficult one. I understand Furman is a brand. For me, it's a brand like Aunt Jemima that is not palatable to a modern college student. And I would hope that one of the pressures that Furman would feel is that students wouldn't want to come to white supremacy university. The name is and should be associated with white supremacy in its most heinous form. And, you know, I'm a little sickened by the fact that I didn't know this when I went to Furman. So I think it's part of all of the things that need to be done. And I guess for me, you know, there's a certain level of culpability of people who can't have universities named after them. They're too evil. You know, and so it's a real debate about whether Richard or James Furman rises to that level. I say they do. I can't imagine that the name could inspire anybody to any of the ideals that we want universities to aspire to. James Furman had hundreds of slaves, and just in kind of a simple research that I did, one of his plantations near in Greenville, there was no slave older than 30 years old on it. I mean, it was a slave farm. He wasn't growing cotton, he was growing slaves for sale. That guy, if you just take James Furman's, the ancestors of the slaves of the hundreds of slaves that he had, and you think about the impact on the thousands of people in South Carolina whose lives were devastated. The idea that that name hangs over a university is appalling to me. So, I mean, I applaud you guys. You're fighting the fight on campus. I know it's important. All of those initiatives you talk about are important, but the name to me stinks. And it can't hang over a university and be expected to inspire the ideals we want universities to aspire to.
I think that when, for example, this initiative to start a diversity GER, it's going to take both faculty and students to put pressure onto committees like the Academic Policies Committee, APC, to put pressure on APC to put pressure on that committee to approve that. When we have new changes to the curriculum, those go before the faculty. Well, actually, those go before committees. I keep forgetting that they go through several committees, right, Cynthia? I think they go through policies and procedures and APC. Oh, curriculum. I keep forgetting about curriculum. And there are student representatives on those committees, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. So contact those student representatives. Make sure that in terms of framing a diversity GER, that I think that's Qwameek, that's coming out of the diversity committee.
That is coming from, this is a student initiative led by all the student leaders on campus. I partnered with SGA, and we are basically asking for this. This is our petition for the student leadership on campus.
Okay. You'll definitely need faculty support. But it's good because the thing is, what I tell students is administration doesn't necessarily listen to faculty because one of the perceptions is that faculty are never satisfied or happy. We are, I would say, a perpetually dissatisfied class. And what happens is, I think, when faculty of color and when women faculty say, look at the inequities in the system, look at the inequities, what happens is that gets folded into a narrative of faculty are just generally dissatisfied. But what I tell students is that you have a voice, and that because you are the driver of the institution in terms of tuition dollars, when you get on board, when you protest, when students protest, and when students say, look at what's happening at this institution, that's when Channel 4, Channel 7, and Channel 13 bring their trucks. That's what happens. That's when change happens, because you have more power than you think you do. Well, I guess let me add one more thing. What else can you do? And I think that being an ally means doing the hard work of, and I know a lot of people don't feel confident doing this, but I've seen, again, through the Black at Furman Instagram, instances in which professors have used, and I want to use this lightly, racially insensitive, racist language. Racist, or have allowed racist incidents to occur in class and have not either stopped them or have not checked themselves. Once again, and I know this is, for students, this becomes kind of a frightening thing because you're standing up to a professor or you're telling a professor, hey, what the thing that you said is offensive. But documenting these incidents, or going to another professor and saying, hey, this, especially if this is happening in a department, this is the thing that happened. Because as I was reading that Instagram, I was looking at some of these things and seeing that these were incidents that students had told me about. And the first thing I said, I was, okay, have you talked to the dean of, or not to, have you talked to the department chair? No, because the department chair is not going to do anything. And part of me is like, well, there's not much I can do because this isn't my department. I can't ride into, music or history and say, hey, get it together. But if people know about these incidents, then that is what puts the pressure on people to change. That's what puts the pressure on administration to do something. So yeah, all right now. I yield the remainder of my time.
I had a student who, after the George Floyd tragedy, sent me a letter. And the student is no longer at Furman, white student. And he'd been a member of a fraternity. And he was reflecting on his membership of the fraternity, even though, he really liked his brothers. It said the brothers were fundamentally good guys. But I could tell he had a kind of a new awareness, and he was kind of frustrated with, some things about his fraternity, and just sort of what am I to do in this moment? And so if you don't mind, I'd like to read you my response. Do we have time? Okay, let's see. Said, it's good to hear from you despite the distressing and painful times we find ourselves. It's truly our summer of discontent, but oddly, I'm also optimistic. Your generation's powerful and unrelenting demand for justice and change have sparked hope in me as a more, quote unquote, mature citizen. I'm proud of you for thinking seriously about your part in promoting change in your sphere of influence. I'm really heartened that you felt comfortable enough to share your thoughts and concerns with me. Coming into a new awareness about a deeply felt organizational affiliation can be uncomfortable and confusing on the one hand. Doing nothing doesn't seem right, but on the other hand, determining how to act on a new conviction can be head spinning. I have a few suggestions, but please let me preface it by saying I wouldn't expect you to act on all of these, nor would I think less of you if you decided not to act on any of them. I share them only as suggestions that I hope will be helpful. 1, create opportunities for your fraternity brothers to gain a constructive understanding of the current racial turmoil. Some cable news outlets promote negative narratives of race-related events and ensuing protests without giving vital historical context. So there's a real need for basic understanding and explanations in context. I'm not talking about a course, but perhaps a guest presenter to provide a basic contextual information. For example, you might discuss what the Confederacy means to Blacks and why, the consequences of Blacks if Lee and the South had prevailed in the Civil War, what or how Blacks feel when they see the Confederates, or what the Old South really meant. I knew that they understood all of that, but I just sort of got on a roll. Why declare Black Lives Matter instead of All Lives Matter? Why do Black athletes kneel or really kneel during the national anthem? How does mass incarceration of Black and brown men relate to all of this? What is white privilege? 2, hold a reflection session with your fraternity brothers on attitudes and treatment of Blacks at Furman with the goal of fostering a genuine empathy rather than pity. The former is more likely to promote change than the latter. To this end, encourage your fraternity brothers to read the post at Black at Furman to understand exactly what racism, implicit bias, a hostile racial environment, racial microaggressions, and racial insensitivity look like at Furman. Also consider the hurt and shame victims feel. Also, lead your brothers in reflecting on the times they've contributed to the negative racial climate for Blacks by either committing some of the offenses or standing by and letting them happen. And then I've got about 4 or 5 more. I won't read those. I won't read those, but it goes on and on, because when he asked me what I could do, it's like, I've got some ideas. But I wanted to give him specifics, because there are things you can do. in this moment, there are things that you can do. There is, pursuing the project of the name change because you feel so, so convicted by it, repulsed by the name. And when you study the history and understanding the history, the implications for naming an institution after people, the people or a family who have promoted, such an odious institution. You have that. You have, Q and what you're doing, Qwameek, what you guys are doing in that project, and with Black at Furman and the Black leader in leadership, and coalescing, coordinating leadership, and coming up with a set of recommendations, and then advancing those recommendations. We have it on a real micro and personal level, me and the students. So it's a major project, but there are things that we can do in my class. Having discussion, trying to work in, discussions about, context. Do you understand what is going on and why? And then the other big question is, what can you do? And that's why I gave the student that list, is that I know that it's like, I want to do something. There are people that want to do something. I know I should do something. I'm convicted, but I don't know why. So major projects, but major opportunities too. We can take a real unflinching look at our past, and it's not, not shame or guilt, but determination, a determination to change, right? It's not just sit there and hand wring and who did what and what. It's like, we know what happened. And if you don't know, or maybe some of us know, and maybe the first thing we did do is to tell you what happened. You need to understand what happened. It's still pretty darn relevant. So, that kind of stuff. Sorry to going on and on, but.
I think that it's hard to do this type of work. And this is something this is my senior year, and I started on the Student Diversity Council my sophomore year. After my first year coming here, I met Chelsea Joseph. And this is just this woman, I am just absolutely inspired by everything she's doing. She's just passionate, seriously into it about her work and everything. But I always I remember speaking to Kayla, also the NAACP president at the time of Shekinah, and all these great leaders that we had, these great diverse leaderships, Dina Estrada, all these people. And just listening to them and hear them speak about the work that they wanted to do and what they were trying to do. But it's like, it was always the same thing. They were tired because the energy wasn't there from the other students. The energy is not there from the other students. And we have such a small number of people of color on this campus. It's hard because you have the same people in these leadership positions taking on 6 and 7 roles, trying to make sure that this stuff gets done. And you get bogged down and tired because it feels like nobody cares. We put on these programs, we have these events, we have these petitions, and then it doesn't even feel like we have the student support. And we just look at that and we're like, well, we're having this program and we're having these people come speak. We're organizing these petitions, we're having these dinners, these things, and there's nobody supporting us. And it's like, you do that for 3 years here. 3 years, you keep doing that and you keep seeing the same thing, students. And eventually I got to the point, I was like, okay, so why is this happening? Why don't we have the student support we need? And it's just like, you come to understand that Furman students are overworked and overprogrammed. Everybody's trying to maximize and just get A's on everything and just be absolutely perfect. They're thinking about job opportunities and all these things. People know what's going on, they see what's going on, but whenever I speak to people, athletes, students, I say, well, why didn't you come to this meeting? Why didn't you come to this town hall when we were discussing this issue? Why didn't you sign the petition? It's just, I'm tired. And I sit there and I sit down with them and I listen to the things that they're saying, they're doing. And it's like, you're an athlete, you're getting up at 6, you're going to practice, then you're going straight to class. You're leaving practice and class, and then you have work, and then you leave that work and you go practice again. And it's like, or you're a student, you're going to class, you're getting up in the morning, going to work, leave work, have schoolwork to do, turn on the news. And by the time you turn on the news, you're just absolutely depressed by everything that's going on. And so I think it's hard to just get that student energy on a campus with as little diversity as we do have here currently, because we don't have the numbers here to be able to do the kind of work I think we need to be trying to do. It's hard when you have to rely on the same 15, 20 people to make everything move. And it's tiring whenever you're inside of that group of people and you see it, it feels like nobody else cares.
you keep putting out all this work, all these efforts, meeting with all these different people, committees, all these different things. And it seems like you're always in the room with the same exact people. Every initiative, every petition I've had, every organization meeting we've had, every time we talk about any of those critical issues, it's the same people in the room. So we're just preaching to the choir at that point. And when you have to keep preaching to the choir and it seems like the message isn't spreading, after a while, it starts to even take a toll on the student leadership, us, because we're like, why are we doing this? We're stressing ourselves out, trying to make sure that these changes get implemented. And it doesn't seem like we have the support of the higher ups or the people below us. So I just think it's hard with the numbers we have and the amount of energy to do the type of work we need to do, because students just aren't energized. There's a lack of energy, I think, because of everything going on. And then, COVID has made things hard because it's harder to meet in person. And, just that face-to-face is how you get people energized. And not being able to do that and speak to people face-to-face has definitely made the kind of advocacy work that we're trying to do a lot harder.
Qwameek, I am so sorry to hear that. Everything you said just took me back to undergrad at the University of Tulsa. Again, I went to a predominantly white undergraduate institution, a little bit larger than TU. We had about, I think, maybe 200 Black students. And everything you said, I was thinking, oh my God, was like our Association of Black Collegians. It was the same 5 to 10 people who we were the ones. And we looked around and we go, why aren't you as angry as the rest of us? Or why aren't you here doing the things with, and I think it's funny because now, 20 years later, it's like I look at a lot of the people and they're, on social media, we're all just kind of angry about it. So I'm like, where were you 20 years ago? And I think that one of the things that we had been told about college was that college was this great egalitarian place. It was the age of a different world. Mm. We all thought we were going to Hillman. And some of us were just like, what? I just want to chill. It took a long time to get here. We didn't want to, I think I remember my grandmother being afraid, being worried that I was going to lose my financial aid because I was one of the loud people running around campus. I think that I just want to say that I hear you, because been there, did that. I would say I literally have the t-shirt. And it does take awareness. I think what happens is, especially as a sidebar, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, especially, and Cynthia, I don't know if this happens with you, when I have a class that has a majority of Black students, what happens is it turns into okay, look at what crap happened at Furman this week. And I think it becomes the safety valve for them to release their frustrations without necessarily putting themselves out there in the way that you and other people have. I think a lot of people are like, I do not want to be putting my name on the front page of this. So I hope that helps a little bit. I know it is stressful because I think I think us as Black faculty, I think there's 9, 10 of us now. We get tired because depending on who and where we are, we also get tasked with, they call it the diversity tax, right? Mm-hmm. With being on committees, chairing this, doing that, and speaking for. And at my big age of 49, I am like, look, I just want to watch Star Trek. I don't want to be angry. But here we are. And I think, what is helpful, and I hope you have people, faculty, or staff whose office you can go, well, not with the Rona, that somebody you can Zoom with and say, you know what, I'll tell you what got me through. My mentor, Vivian Clark, and then Yolanda Taylor. I would go to their offices and just talk about how burned out I was. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll say, I've never had a class with you, Qwameek, but hey, if you want to Zoom to vent, because I'll speak for myself. I know your pain. And we also thank you for the work.
I know that it's yielding some fruit. I really do. I think in this moment, not just the broader context, but the university for the last handful of years has had some momentum in diversity, even if it hasn't yielded the high numbers in students, student admissions, but faculty. There are things happening in and among minority faculty. Roger and I are I was the first chair, first African Black chair. Roger was the second. I think we now have Honoré, who is a chair as well. We have Blacks who have been tenured and promoted. This is all very new to Furman. We do have a president who is responsive and is trying to be responsive to this moment and to the needs, working within the constraints, the administrative and the constraints of the current landscape, it's more than, and people might look at it and say it's not enough, and we could agree that it's not enough, but it's so much more than we have. But the work continues, the goals continue, and we keep forging forward. So I hope that you see that you are finding some satisfaction and you're seeing some fruit, maybe in the people with the students you're able to connect with inside of Furman, and even prospective students, to say, here's the deal. Here's the real deal about the institution. There's a mixed bag. Here's what you're going to get. Sometimes it's on that level. Sometimes it's on a micro level. But we do appreciate what you're doing, and even just having this platform and engaging in this conversation.
Qwameek, you touched me with what you said, and I think what speaks to me about your plight is that, in terms of what students can do, is that white students need to begin to understand that this is not a Black problem. This is a culture writ large problem, largely a white problem, and the cultural privilege of walking down streets that are named after hateful white people and not experiencing that pain on a daily basis, or going to a university named after a white supremacist. White students have to be outraged at that. And so I would say, back to your original question, Charlie, like what students can do, students have got to get off the sideline. There has to be outrage at the world they're inheriting. And part of it is stuff like names are important. It imparts a little bit of pain that we have the privilege of not having to experience. And so I think there needs to be debates. The dialogue needs to be embraced by students. Take a stand. And, if you feel like the name shouldn't be changed, that's a great way to engage students and get them off the sideline. But, I would like to see this not being Qwameek's problem, but the entire student body's problem. Like, all of these issues are everyone's problem. And, so I think like debates, protests, like whatever it takes to engage students on this.